welcome back to another episode of Breaking Boundaries, the world's premier podcast for international students, or at least that's what I tell myself when I log in. I am delighted today to be joined by Christie Ruggieri, the Director of Enrollment Strategies at Northeastern University. Christie, thank you so much for hopping on the pod.
Hi, John. Thanks so much for having me. It's like I said before, I'm super excited for us to meet and connect.
Yeah, and Ruggieri, I've said it correct, Ruggieri.
You did,
Okay.
yeah. I love it. That's awesome.
Phew. All right, we're off to a good start. Well, you're at Northeastern, which has more than 20,000 international students. And so in the U.S., Northeastern is a massive player in the international education scene. And there's a sprawling network of campuses, and I want to get to all that because I think it's fascinating. But I want to start with your own background. A while back, you spent some time living in Beijing, so I was just curious if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your experience living overseas yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was working in college admissions at my alma mater, Drexel University. And Initial View, if you're familiar, they're a platform that helps interview students that are going through the college admissions process to learn, for admissions officers to learn a little bit more holistically about who students are beyond just, a test or, a personal statement. They at the time were doing an Initial View fellowship, and it was an opportunity to work for the company, interview students firsthand, and to really immerse yourself into what college admissions is like in China, but while being removed from a university, right? Because sometimes when you work for a university, students and counselors in schools are going to approach you and approach those conversations with a particular lens. But if you're not tied to a particular institution, you can learn a little bit more about, what it's like from their perspective in a way where they don't think it's going to impact their admission or, chances of admission to the university or something. And so I applied on a whim, and I didn't think I was going to get it. And I was offered this chance to move to Beijing. I packed up my stuff. I moved my cat in at my parents' house. And moved abroad. I probably visited, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head anymore, but I probably visited at least 20 cities throughout China, maybe 25 cities throughout China during that time. So I really got to see the full gamut of, what it's like to live in all the different provinces, to learn about different student experiences. I interviewed over 1,000 high school juniors and seniors that year.
Wow.
To learn more about their experience and what it's like to go through the college admissions process in the U.S. Through their shoes. So it was awesome.
Oh, that's really interesting. So, and this raises a follow-up curiosity that I have. You referenced that given your neutral position, students would often either ask you things or divulge information that they may be hesitant to ask or share with someone at a college admissions office. So kind of diving into that topic, what were some of the questions or things that students shared that they were anxious about that they may not feel comfortable discussing with an admissions counselor?
Yeah, I mean, definitely anxious about how their activities are going to be perceived, especially if they're in a local high school. Like, there might not be as many different clubs and organizations. And so how do they still show that they're a well-rounded student or are being engaged in their community when maybe the high school that they're attending does not have that infrastructure? Sometimes they're making it on their own. Sometimes the school will offer them something. One thing I found really interesting is that a lot of folks would apply to one school in the early round. Like, they would apply to just their ED school. They wouldn't apply to any others. And then after they got that ED decision back, and that's typically in like mid-December, they then, if they didn't get in or were deferred or whatever, they would then at that point make a list of other universities that they were going to apply in the regular round, which is so just culturally different than how we do it in the States, right?
Yeah. Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
I've got young kids and I've already applied to 100 colleges,
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I found that always to be just a different approach than how we do it here in the States. And
interesting. And if a student came to you today seeking admission to Northeastern and they were concerned about a lack of extracurricular activities, how might you advise them to kind of overcome that internal hurdle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. What we really do is we read within the context of where a student is from. We have students from literally 140 countries on our campus, and so it is our job to be experts on the school systems in all those countries. And so we are aware and we take into consideration the curriculum and the background of the school when a student is applying, right? Like a student who is, for example, in an IB curriculum where there is an actual like requirement to be involved in activities to earn your high school diploma, we're going to view that student's level of involvement very differently than someone who is applying from a local high school where we know that there isn't that infrastructure. So it's very much not a one-to-one. It's really where we want to get to know you, understand you, and make sure that you are taking advantage of the opportunities provided through your experience. And I think that that's sometimes hard to understand or for students to realize, but I really want to reassure folks, especially if anyone's listening to our conversation, that it really is taken into consideration. It's not a one-to-one, and we're not expecting similar things from those backgrounds.
Sure, I appreciate you sharing that, because with 20,000 international students, my mind immediately jumped to the advantages of scale with respect to support systems on campus. I assume international students are well taken care of, but I hadn't thought about the fact that because you see students from more than 100 countries routinely, you're able to measure their application against similarly situated peers in that country.
Yes.
And that's another advantage of the volume of students you serve.
Yeah.
That's cool. One last China question, and then I want to move on to Northeastern. You mentioned you visited a couple dozen cities. Was there a favorite city or a favorite experience in China that you took away?
Oh, yeah. So I have a favorite place and then a favorite activity. I did camp on the Great Wall of China.
No way.
Yeah. So there's like the touristy areas where you can go and pay a ticket, but then there's of course the rest of the wall that's called the Wild Wall. And so a few friends and I, we went on a hike. We brought all our camping gear and slept over on the top of the Great Wall, which I couldn't believe it. It was
so
really
cool. Was it cold or was it a relatively warm part of the year?
It was cold. It was like the fall, so it was cool, but it was comfortable. It wasn't too uncomfortable. So that was unreal. And then my favorite place, I love Xi'an. I love Shaanxi food, all the cumin. I love lamb. It's where pasta was invented before they made it to Italy. So you get those really thick, fat, chewy noodles. Yeah, so good.
I'll be right back. I'm gonna go order takeout. That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I had a food question for you. You answered the food question. That's fantastic.
Love it.
And the Great
Yeah.
Wall, as far as Airbnb goes, a little drafty, but what a cool cultural experience.
Worth it for the cold air for sure.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing. Now, I want to return back to your university, because Northeastern occupies this really fascinating place in American education. There is a primary campus in Boston that many domestic students are most familiar with, but you also have a vast network of other campuses. And I want you to perhaps share with listeners first, what is Northeastern and where do you deliver world-class education?
Yeah, so Northeastern is a global university, and as you alluded to, we have a global network of campuses. So of course we have Boston, where we historically started, but we also have our West Coast hub in Oakland, California, right outside the Bay Area. That is a beautiful 135-acre campus with green grass, a community garden. One of my favorite fun fact right now with them is we hire goats to come and eat the shrubbery on campus to help with preventing forest fires, which I just think is the cutest thing. And really that, like I said, is our goal is for that to be our West Coast hub, to have students have really easy, incredible access to the Bay Area, to that financial hub, to that technological hub. And one thing that we are offering in all of our locations, of course, is co-op and experiential learning. And so we really wanted to have a hub where folks could easily access all of the innovation that's happening in the Bay Area. In addition, we also have our London campus. So that's located right in the heart of the city, right by St. Catherine's Docks on the River Thames, looking over the Tower Bridge. And that is once again, we wanted a hub in Europe, in the biggest city in Europe, to allow students to have global experiences. Learning doesn't always happen within the four traditional walls of a classroom at Northeastern, and so we wanted to really establish locations so that students can take advantage of the learning opportunities that all these locations provide, because every culture, every context, every industry is going to have different strengths and different experiences. And there's of course tons going on in Boston, but we wanted to make sure that we have those opportunities all over.
That's so cool. And if I'm an applicant, can I apply to multiple campuses at once? Is that a feasible activity?
Yeah, great question. So on the application, we actually ask students to choose what their enrollment program preferences are. So they can choose Oakland, they can choose London. We also have other programs, New York City Scholars and NUN, which works with partner programs in Europe, and of course Boston. So students will actually rank their top 3 choices, and we'll take into consideration all those options when we're reviewing a student for admission.
Oof. I'm trying to think of among the campuses you mentioned, and I would request a semester in each if you would allow me to do so, because it's hard to pick.
I think we can make that happen for you, John.
All right, deal. and you were on the undergraduate side of things, so this is a big commitment, a big life commitment in time and energy. Do you have any advice for students that are looking to apply to undergraduate programs? We already discussed the kind of handling extracurriculars and potential anxieties about that, but any other advice for would-be applicants looking to go to Northeastern?
Yeah. So my favorite part of the application, which I think sometimes goes overlooked, is the additional information section. So it's not the personal statement. It's another free-form text box where students are able to share any additional information that they think might be helpful to their college application. I think that all of us are human. We all have lived experiences, and we can't just explain that all with a transcript, with a test score, with an activities list, and a personal statement, right? Like, take the opportunity to use that text box to help bring to life something that's important to you, that it doesn't need to be as defining as your personal statement. But for example, maybe your grandmother was sick and you needed to take care of her, and that's why in grade 10 you weren't as involved in activities. Maybe your commute to school is 2.5 hours each way, and that's why you're not involved in activities. Or maybe your grades dipped one year because you were sick and you stayed home for a month. Like, those are things that there isn't a intuitive place to share that information on an application. But if you're willing to share that with us to help us fully understand your trajectory and why your trajectory looks the way you are, we will take that information into consideration. We're human. We're not expecting folks to be human, but we also can't make assumptions. We can only use the information that's provided in front of us. And so if we see that dip in grades for 1 year, for example, if you're sick, if we don't know why, we might just assume you were lazy, like you didn't, like you weren't engaged, right? But if we understand that there was a health thing going on that actually impacted your ability to participate in class, that's a completely different scenario that can be viewed differently by the admissions committee.
Sure. I sometimes hear from students too, there's concern that if they don't fit into this ideal box of what an international applicant ought to be, it could jeopardize their application. But I like your emphasis on individual stories, individual experiences, and that's part of the value that international students bring to the classroom. They provide students in the home country with expertise, wisdom, knowledge that they may not have access to. So it's very much a plus. Well, Christie, thank you for sharing that. I wanted to go back to your reference some of these campuses. We've got Oakland, London, and Boston as the primary ones that you were mentioned. And Oakland, obviously, kind of at the heart of Silicon Valley in the tech world. Campus in Boston, I mean, if you shake a stick in any direction in Boston, you're going to hit a world-class scientist, whether it's biomedical research, other STEM topics. Do each campuses specialize in a particular program, or are you able to get roughly the same programs across each of the global campuses?
Great question. So students in their first year can do a year at any of those locations and then transfer to Boston if they would like. We do offer full degrees on the London campus. They're 3-year UK degrees. And then we also do have the opportunity for students to do all 4 years in Oakland if they would like to. Those two, we have hundreds of majors on our Boston campus just because it's really a huge location. We have tons of departments there. Our Oakland and our London campuses are a little bit smaller. That's by design, so students can still get this world-class education in a little bit more of an intimate environment. So the major offerings are slightly smaller there, but rest assured, if students want to just do 1 year at any of those locations and then transfer to Boston, that's accessible to all students.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And Christie, another question I had for you. I don't know if I've asked a guest this before, but you have this fascinating background where, initially you were in China working for a company that was tied to the world of international education, but you didn't represent a university proper. Today you are fully a representative of Northeastern. So it's clear you have great passion for the world of international education. But what do you enjoy about working with students and working in this space? That's the curiosity.
That's a fun question. I love that question. So I think my time in Beijing, because I didn't study abroad in college, so that was really my first time spending time abroad for an extended period of time. I was like 25, 26, and it was a big adjustment. Like it was a lot to go through and a lot to figure out. Like even just like getting a phone number, like figuring out how to pay a bill and where to grocery shop and downloading all these new apps. Like it was a lot to sort through, and it gives me a whole new level of respect for international students that I always had, but I have even more. Like for someone at 17 years old for them to know that they want to go to another country to pursue higher education, to presumably give themselves and their family a better life in another country that they've never been to, in a language that might not be their first language, like that takes a level of bravery that I frankly did not have when I was 17. Like I didn't. And so I just have so much reverence for folks that are going through that process and admiration for them. And I just want to be a part of that for them. If I can be someone that is a helping hand, that is able to help reassure them that this is the right path for them and they're going to be okay and they're going to be supported, like it's just such an honor and privilege to help be a part of that process.
Yeah. Amen. I feel like every international student is kind of a small miracle. It does take a great deal of courage to leap into the great unknown, but students should know that the benefits they confer on people like you and me are enormous. And, right. And this also is a testament to the value of going to a place like Northeastern that has such robust support services for students, because entering university life for the first time is an adjustment, even if you're from that town. And so international students have more barriers to overcome, but are very well equipped to do so, especially at a place like Northeastern. So, definitely. Christie Ruggieri, really appreciate your time. It's very cool to hear about your own background, your own experience, and international students are lucky to have you in their corner.
Well, John, it was so great to connect, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.